our work. And for me, it's really about making sure that as many parents and families and caregivers, including grandmas and grandpas, we'll get to that, are equipped and upskilled to be ready for the digital world that we live in. Okay, so the first thing is I would like us to do a quick introduction to digital parenting. What is it? Why is it different? Why does it matter? And I'll explain why these texts are in different colors. The first line, it's about the digital landscape. And research shows that about 91% of children aged 3 to 4 use tablets to access the internet. So as young as 3 to 4, they're already using the tablets to access the internet. The bullets in green are actually from a survey that we at Lagos Moms Foundation ran, specifically focused on Nigerian parents. One of the things I recognize in a lot of this work is a lot of the research that is used to make decisions on content that we're creating, trainings that we're delivering, are usually based on the global north. So the US, UK, Australia, and sometimes South Africa. We don't have a lot that's really showing or asking how Nigerian parents, at least in the first phase, and then we'll go African, are feeling. What are their concerns about online safety? So we decided to run a survey, and these results are from that, just some highlights. 26% of the parents that took this survey, who are 100% Nigerian, indicated that their children began using social media under the age of 10. So these are the people who have, who know when their children started, and they've said 26% started under the age of 10. Now, we know that many children are online and are using social media, for example, at younger and younger ages. And it's important to keep that in mind because these platforms are not made for children, but because there is nothing like age verification, the truth is anybody at any age can set up and create a social media account. When it comes to parental concern, 98% of the parents in this survey said that they think about their children's safety online often or always. Over 70% are worried about exposure to inappropriate content, excessive screen time, and social media addiction. When it comes to screen time, 95% of parents are concerned about the amount of screen time that their children have. And when it comes to parental controls, which is one of the first lines of defense to protect our children online, only about 27% report being slightly knowledgeable about privacy settings and parental controls that are available. So this is just a rough picture to show that children are getting access to devices and the internet at very young ages. We call them digital natives, doesn't mean that they're prepared for life online. And we can see this is a rough snapshot, but parents are concerned about their children's safety online, which is what we know. But it's interesting to see our specific data. All right, now, sorry, okay. Now, there was another question we asked, which was around, from parents' perspective, what platforms are their children? Hello, are we okay? Was I muted?
Yes, apologies for that.
Oh, okay. So I was saying that as part of the research as well, we decided to ask parents what platforms their children use from their perspective. And once again, not terribly surprising with the responses, but we see that 24% of parents report that their children are using TikTok. 15% Instagram, Snapchat, 14.3%, Facebook 12.6%, which that surprised me a little bit because, what we generally hear is a lot of younger users are not on Facebook. So that was interesting to me to see how high that was. We have about 10% that are spread over other platforms. And then WhatsApp, interestingly, is 18.6%. Now, when you speak to parents generally, they don't think of WhatsApp as social media, right? Because it is a messaging platform. It is not social media in the term, in the sense of what social media is. However, WhatsApp is can be quite dangerous at all for several reasons, which hopefully we will get into. So even if your child is not using social media, but your child has an internet-enabled phone, and they can therefore have WhatsApp on their phones, that means that they have access to a lot of people who have their phone numbers. There's also Story. So Story, WhatsApp status has an element of social media in it as well. So some parents I see sometimes would feel very safe saying, no, my child doesn't have social media. But then when I kind of ask, do they have WhatsApp? They say they do. And that means that they're just as exposed as if they had social media. So this was just an interesting snapshot. Now, these are just some questions around what does your child do online? And these are some of, the various things that they do. This is based on research. This is also based on, over the years, we've run online safety classes for teenagers and children, 8 to 12-year-old and 13 and above. And these are several things that they do online, which I'm sure parents know as well. They view photos, watch videos, they do it for assignments and research. Excuse me, they interact with friends and family. They share photos, videos, moments with friends and family. They play video games. And interestingly, which is starting to come up, which is the last bubble, which is that they're interacting with generative AI more and more, and deep fakes. We'll talk about it a little bit more, but we all know AI, everybody's talking AI. What does it really mean? How is your child showing up using AI? And have you as a parent had any conversations around the ethical use of AI in your homes, right? Deepfakes basically are videos that are being created to look like it's the person on the video, but it's not them. They've just been superimposed onto a body, and they're saying and moving as if it is them. And we're finding that people are using it in a lot of criminal ways, in a lot of intrusive ways as well, ways that nobody would want to see themselves like that. And we're also finding that children in schools are doing it with their, are taking classmates' pictures and all of that, and are creating deepfakes that can be very distressing. Because even though it's not you, it's terrible to see a video going around, maybe going viral, and it's just been created. That's what a deepfake is. So these are some of the things that are happening. And it's not about Nigeria versus the US or UK. So far, children are online. They have access to all of these tools, and they are using these tools for good and for bad. All right. So real quickly, we're moving on to the slide, which is around understanding the bad players. Now, when we teach the children, we do it this way because we want them to take away almost like a superhero type idea. So when we train younger children, what we try to do is get them to feel that they are digital detectives. And so, what's your superhero power? How do we identify the bad guys? How do we recognize who they are? How do we put them into buckets? And then what do we do to stay safe? So some of this presentation includes what we're actually teaching your children, because what we believe is for there to really be holistic digital safety, online safety, digital citizenship, parents, caregivers, educators, and children must have the same base information to some extent so that we can actually help our children make the right choices. I've had classes with young children, and when I ask them certain questions, they will tell me the reason they haven't told their parents or teachers certain things is because they don't think mommy or daddy understand. I hope we heard that. They don't think their parents understand what is going on in the digital world. So they don't bother telling their parents when they come across certain things that are quite distressing. Or they feel fear that if they were to tell their parents anything inappropriate that they have seen or come across, the parents are just going to judge them, shout, punish them, take their devices. These are extremes that we don't want. We don't want children keeping things to themselves because they feel the adults in their lives don't understand. Neither do we want the other extreme where children don't say anything because of fear of punishment, and therefore they are exposed much longer than they need to. So we're going to talk a little bit about it as well if we have time. One of the things I find as the biggest challenge is really parenting styles. Because if your parenting style is not in sync, where your child feels safe bringing things to you, it's very difficult. Can we please mute? There's someone that needs to be muted. Okay, so now here are the rough four bad players, like I said, to get the children engaged and get them to feel they're digital detectives. In fact, when we finish the training, they all get certificates saying, I'm now a digital detective. The first one is the tell-it-all. That's the person that shares way too much information online. That can also be you. You can actually be a bad guy without meaning to be. So are you sharing too much information about yourself online, your family, your friends? Let's remember that online children have access to billions of people, billions. Nobody will open their front door to even everybody in your neighborhood. Talk less of exposing children to all billions of people's opinions, thoughts, and all of that online. So the tell-it-all shares way too much information, and this can be very dangerous. And parents, this is for you as well. I know you love your children, but when Bode is starting a new school, and they're going to Green Springs, oh, my honey has started a new school, primary one, so proud of you. You take a picture, the picture shows the logo of the school, maybe it's even in front of your house, that has something that lets whoever is a cyber criminal know exactly where you live. No, you're giving them information that they have no business having. So I'd just like to caution us as parents as well that what we share is playing a part of these bad guys, right? Bad players online. And your children are watching you. If you share every single thing, they are going to start to do the same thing. The intruder or hacker is the next one. And that's the person who wants to access your account, personal information without permission. So that's what hackers are. And we have hacking that happens now. Some are actual people who sit down for fun. They just try to hack systems for fun. And then you also have bots that are hacking as well. So there's a whole system around how people potentially get hacked. We'll also talk about how to protect yourself. The third one is the clickbait, the phisher. These gain access to your information by tricking you, and then they harm your device with malware potentially. And lastly is the troublemaker. Those are the ones that can hurt your feelings. So these are our 4 bad guys or bad players. All right, so let's quickly talk about the tell-it-all. There's several social media apps that children use. We've talked about it earlier, the ones that parents reported their children are using, which gives you so much access to everybody online who's on those platforms. AI is increasingly included in these platforms. It was quite interesting to me. I think about 2 years ago, was it a year ago? When did Gen AI come out? ChatGPT. Wasn't that last November? Anyway, thereabouts. And I remember playing around in Snapchat and recognized that they had generative AI in Snapchat. So it's one thing to tell your child, don't talk to strangers. Suddenly you have to tell your child, don't talk to a bot, because it's now built into Snapchat. So a child can literally start having a conversation with an AI character. Now, very recently, there was a story that made it to the news, a very unfortunate situation of a young man, teenager, 14, 15-year-old, who unfortunately took his life. And when they traced his phone and his messages, they recognized he had been using a platform called character.ai, which allows you to create a character and build a relationship and start talking to that character like they are real. Children should not be allowed in this kind of spaces. Anyway, the young boy formed a relationship with a bot, formed a romantic relationship with a bot, got into trouble with his parents, who punished by taking away his devices. By the time he got it back, he was very, upset. He spoke to his AI girlfriend. It's just crazy to think about, who somehow, it's alleged that this relationship he had encouraged him to do what he did. So they are now suing this platform. Just see the world we live in. It's no more just stay away from a stranger. It is don't build an unhealthy reliance on somebody who is not even human. So that's the world we're living in. And we're finding that for some children who might have challenges with friendships or in-person relationships, they can get very safe and very comfortable online and build relationships virtually. So we have to be very careful what platforms are our children using and be aware of it as well. Many people share too much information and compromise themselves online. When it comes to grooming, this is where sometimes you help, people unintentionally help groomers. Because if a groomer knows where you go to school, that you travel, that you just came back, your mommy and daddy have a private jet, they will use that information to get you when they get into the children's mind. So groomers know exactly how to use all of this information that we put out there to use against us. So please, 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 it's very critical. Let's teach our children to pause before they post anything. They should ask them, okay, why am I sharing this? Let me think about it. Might it hurt me? Might it harm my reputation? Or somebody else's, right? Might it put me in trouble? Tell them to avoid sharing personal information publicly. You'll be amazed how many people, without meaning to, take a picture right outside their house or share their phone number or email password by sending it to somebody. We have to be very careful. Okay, so parents themselves need to be digital detectives. Okay. Now we're talking about the second bad player, which is the intruder. And it's important we understand as parents ourselves so we can help our children understand how to stay safe. With the hacker, these are some of the things that you want to teach your child. One is always using a unique password for all your important accounts. We don't have time. If we were in the room now, I'd have asked how many people here are using the same password in many places, because you don't know, because you can't be bothered to keep thinking of new passwords. Please drop it in the chat quickly. Yes, no. How many of you are using the same password? Many of us are guilty. Teach your children from an early age. Don't use the same password for several platforms. Because once a hacker gets a password, sometimes it's a bot, remember, they just start to replicate that. And then it's like giving them free access to everything. So use a unique password, mix it up. Don't ignore all of those things that tell you how to create a strong password, capital, symbols, mix it up. Don't use your child's name. We know you love your child. Don't put Bode Williams 1234. It's too easy to guess, okay? When you're using platforms, kindly log out after use, especially when it's a public device. Yeah, so those are some things as parents to do as well, because cyber criminals are hitting everybody on every age. There's nobody that's safe in this scheme of things. The other things to teach them, we've talked about it, don't use personal information. Tell them to never share passwords, not even with their friends. Your password is yours. Don't share it with a friend. Oh, my friend just asked me to share the password. Tell them to not do that. Okay, and when you're using devices outside, especially children, or they log into a friend's phone, they should not remember.
Some people would have bought something for you.
They should always remember to log out.
People worked there.
Okay. So now we're talking about the third type, which is the clickbaiter, and the clickbait. And this is the fisher who gains information by pretending. The best way I explain this to children is if something seems too good to be true, just run. So somebody tells you you're going to win the newest iPhone by just clicking here. It's too good to be true. Don't do it. A lot of those things are the baits. So once somebody clicks from there, whatever the cyber criminal's intention was, then tends to run. So children must be very careful not to click on things that are too good to be true. They have to get used to being able to match the website. Some websites have gotten so good with masking. And so you think you're going to CNN.com and putting your information in to create an account on CNN.com, for example. But if you really pay attention to the URL, it's actually not CNN.com. Maybe it's new.cnn.com. So you have to get very used to being able to spot, is it the actual website? Because that's how people are masking, and they will give you a website that seems to be the genuine website, ask you for information, you put it in, and from there the scamming happens. So, children just need to get used to it. And our children are so smart. Don't think they get overwhelmed by all of this. Once you tell them, it sticks in their mind, they start to run with that script. I remember one of my youngest students has been a 5-year-old when I did this online safety program at CIS many years ago. And so people thought, oh, isn't 5 too young? It was interesting. She was doing homework and her father said, oh, let them go on Google to check. And she told her dad, not everything you see online is true or real. And he thought, where did you learn that? And it was from that session. So imagine that child at 5 is already equipped to know that, not everything I see online is true. So that's one of the ways. The other good thing is to be able to identify if the website is preceded by a green padlock, then it means that it's very secure, especially for websites that are asking for your information. I mean, I'm not going to say you're not going to do things online. So maybe you're putting in your card details, you're paying for something. Just try to make sure that it has the green padlock. Then at least it's secure. And what I would also advise is when you put your details in online, don't save it for convenience. Don't say, oh, save my card details for convenience. That's exactly when it's also very convenient for your cyber criminal to do something with that information. Okay. And for our children, please, please, please remind them not to download items from sites that they are not sure about. This is how a lot of malware and hacking happens. Okay. So I want us to talk now about cyberbullying, because that's a big part of what is happening. It's almost like it's a huge problem, Bullying, there's always been bullying, there'll always be bullies, fortunately. A lot of schools will have safeguarding plans in place to ensure children are not bullying each other. However, what we are finding is that cyberbullying is its own growing epidemic, actually. And it's even worse than in-person bullying, because with physical bullying, you can tell a child maybe has a mark or was hit on the playground or was pushed or something. The cyberbullying is happening online, many times behind a screen, and parents don't know. Also, bullying that happens in person tends to continue online. So unfortunately for children who are victims, they don't have a respite. It happens in school and it carries on online, WhatsApp groups, it carries on. So it's very, very crazy. 34% of children have been victims of cyberbullying. 60% have also communicated with strangers online. These are all from research, a mix of the Lagos Moms one, but other research as well that is recent around this material and stuff. Like I mentioned with the age 8 to 12 from the Lagos Moms Online Safety Mastermind, when we asked them on cyberbullying. So many put up their hands that they had been cyberbullied. Some of them also recognized that they had been cyberbullied because we talked about it. Sometimes children just need the language, they need the expression to be able to know that, oh, that's what that is. So we explain what it means to be cyberbullied. You're being made to feel uncomfortable. People are saying mean things about you. Sometimes you're a bystander. Do you participate? And this was when I was saying that a few of them told us they didn't report to anybody because they didn't even think if they said cyberbullying to mom and dad will understand, or their teachers will understand, So we have to make sure that we are very aware so our children know to come to us. All right. So what I've called the cyberbully in terms of the bad guys or bad players is the troublemaker. So the way I explain it to children is this one comes to hurt your feelings. They say mean things, maybe not even to you, but to other people. They're disrespectful. They bully others. They intimidate others. They spread rumors, lies, and gossip. You don't want to be part of that. But what can your child do? Sometimes children will say, oh, okay, this person is a cyberbully, but what do I do? If I block them, if I report, I'll get into trouble. So that's why you need your children to be able to feel safe to tell you. So you can come up with a plan together. And the plan can be different things. Thankfully, a lot of the social media apps have now evolved where when you block somebody, the person is not notified they have been blocked. So your child has things they can do to take action. They can block, they can stand up for themselves, they can take screenshots, they can report to the platform. There are many things children can do. But what I find is if a child does not know that there are things they can do, then they are not going to do it. Okay, so that's the fourth one. So we talked about the 4 bad players online, right? The tell-it-all, the clickbait, excuse me, the hacker and the troublemaker. Okay. Then I also wanted to also talk about fake news, which is a big thing that's happening a lot. I just took this picture of 2 different stories. One is legit, one is not. And it's important we teach our children the importance of fake news. It is happening a lot. And one of the fastest ways to think about it is, okay, is the story trying to be sensational? Typically, fake news wants you to read it and immediately have an emotion, either to evoke anger or fear or worry, typically, right? And it's not only children, parents too. Hello, how many of us get things on WhatsApp, get a story, forward it on, and then recognize, oh, it was fake. Then you now think, who are all the people I spread it to? All the groups they went to. Let us now start going to those groups and say, sorry, that story is not real. But the truth is that with AI now, there's so much fake news out there. So how do we identify fake news? These are just 3 quick things you can do. If you look at this story, the first one of this blog is Danny Young reveals why he took down Tiwa Savage's video from YouTube. That's sensational. That's just like, let me, look at Guardian at the bottom. Danny Young speaks on YouTube ban of Tiwa Savage's. It's still the same people in it, but it's more subdued. It's a fairer, more neutral topic. So those are one of the ways you can teach your children about it. Secondly, teach them to check the source. Because anybody now can just carry news and spread it, you will find that before you see real news article, you might see 20 blogs first talking about it, or on YouTube, 40 self-imposed presenters talking about the issue before you find the real story. So we have to get used to checking the source. And then lastly, a quick tip, don't react immediately. Don't forward, don't spread it. Don't forward right away. That should say right away. So those are things we can do. Okay. I want to talk quickly about cyber psychology. I think we're getting to the end. I believe 2 or 3 more slides, and then we can do Q&A. A lot of this is really about awareness. It's not to overwhelm anybody, but we're talking about the things that are happening. We're talking about things that are moving in the space of this, in this digital world we live in. I recently completed a program in cyber psychology. It's a unique domain, a unique space that's coming out that's focusing on understanding the impact, dynamic processes and outcomes of technology interaction with human behavior. It's looking at how humans are being affected by their interactions online and how technology is also affecting us. The ultimate goal being to make sure that we are using technology for good. Right? So current research topics focus a lot on cyberbullying, virtual communication, social media addiction. Something else that has come in here is online dating, which I want to drop very quickly. So I know for lots of parents, you probably have an age in your mind when your child should start dating. However, children are dating virtually nowadays. So they don't have to leave your house right from the living room, bedroom, they are dating. And they're doing things online that they shouldn't be doing. They're sending inappropriate pictures because they feel they're in a relationship with this person online. And in cyber psychology, there's a phenomenon called online disinhibition effect, which means that the way we behave online is very different from the way we would in person. And a practical way I explain this to my children, my teenagers, is when you meet somebody, you're talking in person, it takes a while to really feel like you're so close to this person. Because if you're in school, how many hours a day are you going to have to talk to each other? Right? There are other things going on in your life. However, with devices, people can communicate for multiple hours every single day. And it makes people feel a bit less inhibited, right? And so as a result, people are forming relationships faster, quicker, feeling more comfortable. But it's safe comfort. I mean, it's fake comfort. You don't really know this person. Because there's so much chatting, going back and forth in the moment, you can build relationships faster. So parents, please, you have to talk to your children about virtual relationships. Okay, it's happening faster. They're meeting people on video game platforms. It's not to ban them. That is never the answer. But it's to talk to them in a way that they recognize that, mom has spoken about this, dad spoke about this, and then they're able to be more aware. At the end of the day, you just need them to be more aware. And I'll end this by saying that children's media use is shaped by parents' intentional, conscious, as well as unintended and unconscious actions. That means that our children's reactions and relationships with digital technology, social media, is based to a large extent based on what we consciously do, talk about, and model, and what we even don't. But they are seeing us, and that's helping them form their their mindset. I know I said I'll talk for 20 minutes. I recognize it's more than that. So do we stop here so that we can then have time for Q&A?
I think you can just wrap up and then we'll take the Q&A because you have quite a number of questions. And I know that it would be nice if you take time to answer them. Okay, so I will spend another just 2 minutes. When I typically do this training, it's much longer. But I like I said, one of the big things I like telling parents, please don't feel overwhelmed. This is all information for us to use. When we are more equipped and we're more informed, we know what to do. All right, so let's start wrapping up with building a family digital citizenship plan. We all need to have one. If you don't have a plan, what's that saying? If you don't plan, you don't plan to fail, but if you fail to plan, something like that. You know what I'm talking about? So we all need to have a family digital plan. And with all of the things I've said, yes, it's one thing to hear it today, but what are you practically going to do? The first step is to involve all family members to enhance understanding and create some guidelines. A simple one I tell parents, if you're just starting this, is have times in your house, in your home, or areas in your home where there's no device. So one example is during dinner time, no screens, and that includes mom and dad. Put your phones down. Have open communication. Make eye contact. Ask open-ended questions. What happened? Don't say, how was school? They'll say, fine, you haven't learned anything. Or you ask a question such as, oh, what did you have for lunch today? Or who did you play with on the playground today? That opens conversation. So let's move from closed-ended questions to open-ended questions. That gives you a lot of insight into what is happening. And then start to create rules and plans in the house around how you use devices. And they have to see you doing it. Right? A lot of us work from home, but your child doesn't know what you're doing. All they see you is behind a phone, a laptop all the time. That's what they model. So no, my answer is don't work. My answer is, can you find ways to not let them always see you behind a device? Maybe you want to have a little area in the house as your office. Then when you finish, you get up and come and do things with them one-on-one. Maybe you need to stop reading only ebooks and have a physical book. Thank you.
How many of us last time held a physical book, but we'll be saying the children are not reading, but they never see us reading. So that's really important. Also, please, no phones in their rooms. You know, a lot of children tell me, yeah, I take my phone to my room at night. You're right, because I wake up in the night, I go to the bathroom and then just pick the phone, and then next thing, 2 hours on the phone. And guess what? The groomers can tell the child who is not being monitored. If a child consistently is online at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., hello, they're telling the groomers that, this one is open. This one is available for me to, so we have to keep those things in the back of our minds. Role-playing scenarios is very important. Don't assume your children know what to do. So play some scenarios with them. That, oh, if this happened, how would you react? But when you read news, for example, go and ask them about it. Obviously age appropriate, right? And then we have to be role models at home. Like I've said, a lot of children will tell me, My parents are always saying I shouldn't use my phone, but they're always on their phone. Anytime I want to talk to them, they're always on their phone. So some children are feeling very lonely, very abandoned, not heard, because every time they want to talk to their parents, you are so busy and distracted, constantly distracted with your devices. So we have to be the model that we're hoping to get them to be. All right, and then we need to encourage digital literacy. Critical thinking is very, 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 very big part of digital literacy. Critical thinking. Is the child able to see the content, think about it, process it, and then take action? And then in this particular survey, it showed that only 99.5% of twins, so twins are just before they become teenagers, right? So that 10 to 12 have been taught anything about privacy settings by parents. Lots of children have never been told anything about really how to be safe online. All they just do is their parents say, you're always wasting time on that thing. Things like that, but they're like the parents haven't sat them down to tell them what is good use. How do you show up online in a way that's positive? So let's be keeping in mind that critical thinking is part of digital literacy. Yeah, and then promoting positive interactions, right? Promoting digital citizenship can reduce experience of online harms. And what this means, I mentioned it earlier, when a child has a language, has a narrative, knows what red flags look like, they are more likely not to fall victim. Whereas when they have no clue that this is a groomer, this is how people behave when they want to ask you for nudes, this is how they behave when they want to ask you to move from video game platform to WhatsApp, that WhatsApp is encrypted, right? So nobody can intercept the message. So a lot of these groomers know that. So your children have to know it. That, okay, if somebody meets you on a game and wants to move you to WhatsApp, don't do it. Things like that, they must know. So digital literacy starts with us. And I believe I talked very fast, but this is the end. Conclusion and Q&A is really just, we must continue to learn. Digital does not end. It's the most dynamic times we have ever lived in. And it's continuing to move faster and faster and faster. And we as parents must not be overwhelmed, but we must be informed so we can help our children stay safe online. And then the last thing I'll mention is, parental software is critical. If that's the one thing you take away today, do you have anything whatsoever that is protecting your children online? With parental software, you can block what times they go on, you can block websites. There are a few different platforms. It's not about which one. There are many. I have some that I can recommend. But please, if you don't have it as part of your parenting digital plan, you have to implement it. And these are just some resources we have, because I know sometimes parents can feel overwhelmed. Where do I even start from? So this parenting club I have really helps people get worksheets, different topics. How do I start this conversation? What questions should I ask? You don't have to think about it all yourself. It's there and we update it regularly. And then you can also subscribe to our digital parenting newsletter, which really brings you pertinent information about what's going on in the digital world so that we can protect our most, our jewels, really. So thank you for listening today. I hope this was informative, and I'm looking forward to taking Q&A.
Thank you so much, Ms. Yetty Williams. I think this was a very enlightening and informative session, and I have quite a number of questions already. Of course, some of the questions you already answered, but I'll just go ahead and just go over everything. Now, on top of the questions we have, are you ready, ma'am?
Yes, let's go ahead. Yes.
Okay. So, top question here is how do you balance online safety with giving children independence? That's the first question. Should I go ahead and just read maybe like 2 questions and then
okay, with online safety
I'll
and
take it one at a time.
Independence. Okay, you can give me another one and I can do 2 at a time.
Okay. Then someone asked that, are there any specific online safety concerns for children with special needs?
Yes. Yeah, special needs. Okay, fantastic. So let me answer this 2 quickly. So in terms of online safety and child independence, it's a balance. I don't think any child should have any so-called independence when it comes to online safety under the age of, let's say, 18. Yeah. So, but you have to do it in a way that is respectful, I believe, child as well. So it's not about saying that, just put rules in place without communication. But a child 18 and under should have parental software controls in place. You should have access to their devices. You should be able to do spot checks. And I tell my children, I remember when I gave them phones for the first time, I said, these are the rules of engagement. I'm going to have your passwords. I'm going to spot check. It's not about spying. I'm telling you what I'm going to do, and I'm doing it because I want to keep you safe. It's not that I don't trust you, but it's because what is out there, not everybody has your best intentions. So I find when you start with that, there's less resistance. So things like, we don't keep phones in our room at night over, during the week, right? You turn it in at night. That has been something that's going in our house for years. My oldest is 17. There's no struggle about it. At night, she turns it in. In fact, she tells me that because of her, some of her friends have now started doing that. Friends that otherwise have their phone with them, they've seen that as a result, they don't get enough good night's sleep. So we have to balance it in that we put the controls in place, but we do it in a kind way. We explain to the children. They don't have to like our rules, but they must understand it. And that's my perspective on the kind of parenting style that's the best, is let children understand. So that's what I'll say about that, because there are so many stories of children, even up to 17 sometimes, who get, I don't know if you've heard about the recent one of a young man in the US who was groomed by Nigerian brothers on Instagram. They were in Nigeria, these boys in America. They found him, they made him think that he was getting into this virtual relationship I was talking about earlier with a white girl, got to the point of sending pictures. Next thing, as soon as they sent pictures, and they knew everything about him, where he went to school, they started to threaten him, blackmail him, he threatened to harm himself. They said, quick, harm yourself. And yet there was a video about it where the brothers were like, they didn't really think he would do that. So we have to be careful. I don't think there's independence really when it comes to social media or online safety for now. Let's do what we can so that when they live under our nose and we can no longer manage them online, we know that we've done what we need to do. So that's my answer to that. In terms of special needs, we are finding that children who have special needs sometimes, and therefore it depends on the type there. It's such a spectrum, right, of special needs. But we do find that sometimes children who struggle with certain types of challenges can find respite in the online world. But because they are vulnerable in the online world, there are people that are out there waiting to take advantage of them. So I dare say that for parents with children who have any kind of special needs whatsoever, sometimes it's even just social skills. You don't know how to make eye contact and talk to people. Then they're happy to get lost in their virtual world. You must monitor, you must break it up, and you must create an offline experience for every online activity. And a quick tip for that is, if your child has spent 30 minutes online, let them go and do something offline for 15 minutes. So teach them that balance and they grow with it.
Thank you so much. I have another question here saying, you should please shed more light on the encrypted nature of WhatsApp. And what does that mean and how does it harm?
So with WhatsApp, what it means is basically that the messages cannot be intercepted by anybody else, except for the two people that are having that conversation. So you can imagine how dangerous that is if a groomer should get your child's details on WhatsApp and is chatting with them one-on-one. In terms of when it comes to safety issues or investigation, it's very difficult to intercept those messages because it is protected between the two people who are chatting. So unless you physically pick your child's phone to look at it, you will not know what they're talking about. So that's in summary what it means, and you can imagine why it can be quite dangerous.
Another question here is, how do parents identify when a child is bullied online? Basically, how can parents recognize signs of cyberbullying?
So, there's something called mental health first aid. And one of the things parents must do is be able to recognize changes in your child. A child who is being bullied, whether in person or online, you will notice changes in them. So if you notice any changes, for example, they get off their devices and they seem to be in a bit of a mood, or they seem more agitated, or when you show up, they are covering their phone, or things start to change, maybe school, their grades, they are becoming more quiet. If you're noticing changes in the baseline of the child, you want to pay attention to what might be going on. It could be cyberbullying, it not. But you want to pay attention to what might be happening if your child is changing. Then start asking questions. But the way you ask questions as hello is what will determine whether or not your child will tell you. So ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. Pay attention to their behavior when they get off devices. Are they more secretive? Those things are signs that something is going on. Then you can start investigating.
Okay, thank you so much. So another question here says, how do you think parents should approach online safety with their children?
Okay, I would say you go ahead.
Especially if they have been caught in the wrong.
Okay, so that's an interesting question also, because it means really how do you basically it's what's the discipline format for a child who's done something wrong. Now when they say they've been caught in the wrong, that is such a broad statement. What have they been caught wrong doing? That really would determine the type of discipline and consequences you put in place. The best thing really is sometimes beforehand have a plan with the children. If you do A, B, C, D, these are some of the consequences that will happen. And please, parents, make sure that the consequences match the crime. So don't say if you spend 1 more hour than I told you to spend on your phone, I will take your phone and keep it away from you for 2 years. That punishment doesn't fit the crime. You are unlikely to see it. So the child will just be like, okay, mommy will soon forget. So try and keep it to be balanced, right? So I don't know what that wrong is, and I don't want to assume, but I would say you want to definitely do some kind of positive discipline is what I call it. The child has done something they shouldn't do, and you had explained to them that it was something they shouldn't do. Have a conversation, then put a discipline plan in place. It could be they lose their device for a week or 2 days. They have to write you. The one of the ones I liked before was write me a 2-page front and back essay on what you have done wrong, why it is wrong, and what you will do differently in the future. So that's what I would say about how you try to manage that. But I would hardly ever say the solution is to take their phones away from them. That doesn't ever really work, because the children typically have access to platforms in some other way. Even when you think you have taken the phone, they have their laptop, they have tablets, they have their friend zone. So that's not always the solution. Talk it through.
Yes, I think she wrote here, when it involves sharing inappropriate pictures.
Okay. So yes, that's a big one. So it's definitely to take the devices in the first instance, try to investigate how far they've gone with those inappropriate pictures they have sent. Who did they send it to? If the child is under 18, there's something called the right to be forgotten, which means that if a child's content has been shared online, whether they shared it themselves, which they shouldn't have, but your biggest job as a parent is to say, how do we try to scrub that information as much as possible? So there are things you can do to start to protect the child, get the content back as much as possible. It won't be perfect. The children need to know that what you share online stays online. But that's the first step. Then next is to have conversations around how did this happen? And then thirdly is to make sure if you don't have parental software in place, put it in place so that it can trigger when certain types of content is being shared. And I'll drop it. I hope I have it nearby. If not, I will just say the names for some of the parental softwares that I have personally used that I recommend.
Yes, please go ahead, because I even have a question here asking for suggested tools or software that can help protect children from online harm.
Yeah. You know what I'll do? I will send it to you so you can maybe send it to the whole database, because I typically have it ready, but I forgot to do that today. Okay. But some are like, it's called Custudio, there's Bark. So that Custudio is cute. In fact, go to lagosmoms.com and search parental software. I have an article that lists them. Google also has its own version. Apple has its version. So those are the 4 I typically mention. Custudio, Bark, Apple Family parental software controls built into the Apple ecosystem. And then Google Family Link has another one that's free for the whole Android ecosystem.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I have another question here. What role should parents, children, and caregivers play in maintaining online safety? I think you kind of covered it, but you just want to touch a little bit on it.
Yeah, I'll touch on that. I'll touch on it because I think we've talked about the parents role extensively. What I will touch on is the caregivers. angle, because caregivers include grandma, grandpa, nanny, auntie. Anybody who has access to your child has a part to play in keeping them safe online. You'll be amazed sometimes, right? Parents can have all these controls on the child's device. Yeah. So let's even say you've installed all the parental software. But then you have grandma and grandpa in the house who don't have any control on their phone, who maybe don't even understand what's going on, and the child asks for their phone. Some of them use those grandparents' phones to access content that they shouldn't. Or you have a nanny or a caregiver or a cook in the house who has a phone where they are watching inappropriate things. Your child can also have access to that. So from that angle, I'll say when you're doing your family digital audits, I say everybody should do an audit. Just even figure out what are all the tools my child has access to. It's not just their phone. There's laptop, there's tablets, there's mommy's phone, daddy's iPad. That is, by the time you do a whole list, you can see that in your house, maybe you have 15 devices that your child has access to. And all of them are points for your child to be exposed to things they shouldn't. So it's a very good question, because we shouldn't underestimate the role other people in our homes play as well. Obviously, you cannot take the phones away from grandma, grandpa, auntie, uncle, cook. But what you can do is have the conversations, raise awareness. If they see that the child is always asking for their phone, they should say, no, you cannot have my phone. Things like that can protect the child.
Well, thank you. This question says, what emerging trends or technologies concern you in terms of online safety? And how will online safety evolve in the next 5 to 10 years?
What was the first part of the question?
What emerging trends or technologies concern you, Ms. Yetty Williams, in terms of online safety? And how will online safety evolve in the next 5 to 10 years?
Great question. So how does it affect me? Not quite sure what direction that means, but I'll just talk about what I think is happening in the online digital space. I think probably the most innovative, life-changing thing that has come into our world is really AI, generative AI. AI has always been around. Generative AI is what is causing everything to be, up and down. And the generative AI is that ability for it to be very sorry about that. Someone just dropped a message. To be generative AI is very natural sounding, or it feels natural sounding. So I think one of the biggest things we're seeing is that jobs are changing. The future of jobs are changing. More and more jobs that if you don't have the ability to use AI in any way, you don't know how to implement it in your work. I think those people are becoming less attractive in terms of in the workplace. So I think everybody needs to get a little bit of upskilling around how to use technologies, AI, to be more productive, to do your work better, and things like that. For our children, they are using AI. If you haven't talked to them about it, they are. The question is, different schools have different rules around what is right, what is not right. But to say AI, don't use it, that one is what they say, foul. They are using it. So let's have the conversations. What does it mean? Okay, I'm the one who even mentioned it first to my children. So we then discussed, if you use AI all the time, you can seem to get away with it, but guess what? Down the line, it will catch up with you. Because when you get to the exam room or work, it will come out that you don't know the information. So I think AI is here to stay. I think it's going to keep changing the world as we know it. I think there's a lot of good to it, but there's a lot of concern about the exposure we all have now. The deep fakes are a concern because they're also getting much more. What's the word I'm looking for? Now you almost don't know whether or not it was the real person or not. I think the last thing I'll say is when it comes to all this virtual reality, augmented reality, what do they call that thing? Like the Apple Vision, Oculus, the Facebook one. I'm a techie. I love technology. So when things like that come out, I'm usually the first to adopt it. So I remember when I bought the Oculus and I put it on, the way it immersed me into the world of virtual space, I said, this is not something children should use because it distorts so many things. So let's not be quick to say something is new. It's new age. Let me buy it for my children. So I think I would just say, let's continue to lead with common sense, but let's be upgrading ourselves as well so that we're not dinosaurs, so that we know what's happening and then we can help our children. But I'm excited about what the technology space offers. I do think we need to all be more intentional in using it positively and creating content that's helpful versus just passively consuming. And maybe that's one last thing I'll say is that the way girls are using a lot of this technologies versus boys is slightly different. We're finding that a lot of girls are on social media consuming content, watching makeup, watching this, watching that. They're having self-film dysmorphia. They're always using filter to fix themselves. Some of them now don't like how they look anymore because they are so filtered themselves. And when it now comes time to meet somebody, they're like, hey, that picture I've been putting, that's not me. That's causing some mental health challenges, right? If a child gets so used to distorting how they look, imagine what that means for dating, for meeting people in person. So I think it's very important we keep that in mind, that girls are doing much more of that. For the boys, we're finding that quite a lot of them are playing violent video games, and that is starting to change them. So when a child gets off a video game and is charged, it's because they play the game they've been playing. The AI and the technology is so fine-tuned now that they literally feel like they're in it. So they're feeling those body sensations like they're in it. So you want to watch, what games are my children playing? Some of the games are terrible. Some allow them to pick up prostitutes. It's terrible. So don't just buy it for them and say, it's the newest game in town. Well done. You passed in your exam. Take. So that's what I'll say on that.
Yeah. I have 4 more questions. The first one is, what age is advisable to buy a phone for your child? That's the first question. Should I just say the
No.
question?
Let me quickly take it. I'll be answering now 30 seconds. So I would say that for the first age to get your child a phone, in fact, I did a short video on that recently on my Instagram, and I said it's not even about the age you should buy your child a phone. It's the age you as a parent are ready to monitor your child. Because if you give your child a phone, you are giving yourself work. So make sure you are ready, you are equipped, and you are ready to do the check. I don't think children should get smartphones, honestly, till the age of minimum 13. Minimum. People will say, but I want to be able to phone my child. And get them the phones that are not smartphones. All those, what they call dumb phones. That's what my child first called this when I got it for her. Say, Mommy, this is a dumb phone. I said, but you want a phone that you can use to phone me. Text. And these phones are text. So you can try and limit access to smartphones as long as possible. Yeah, but minimum, I would say 13. You can hold on till then. And make sure that when you buy the child a phone, just know that that's the beginning of a world where you have to be monitoring. And there's no parent I've seen who gives their child a phone very early who's like, I'm glad I did it. Next question.
Thank you. I think they are similar to what you've answered before, but I'll just read it. So, what steps can parents take if their child is experiencing cyberbullying? And third question, how can families promote positive online interactions? Yes. Okay. I think you should take those two, then I'll ask.
Yeah. Okay, the last one. So for the cyberbullying, like we said, if you've seen signs, you want to start with conversations with your child. And what is happening? But I'm noticing that, are you okay? Is everything okay? Do you want to talk? You need to build that rapport so that your child feels safe to tell you. And if they tell you something that you want to scream, you want to fly up from your chair and start hitting your head, you will learn the art of being calm. You breathe deeply, take the information. If you need to really exclaim, take a break and say, give me 1 second. And then go to the bathroom, do your then come back and say, thank you for sharing that. But tell me again, what did you say happened? So that gets you to have the information. Then you can now start devising your plan. So that's what I'll say is, don't overreact in the moment. I know it's not easy all the time, but learn what happened, listen, and then see what you can do. Because many times you have to involve the school. But the school also has to have a pastoral care in place where they know how to handle these sensitive situations, because sometimes they can make it worse for the child. So that's what I'll say. Identify it. Don't hide away. Don't overreact. Or many times if it's involving school, for example, you have to get the school involved. What was the second question? About positive use, Abby? Yes. So parents themselves must be those role models. So what I would say, for example, is if you're on social media, what are you doing on social media? Because your children are watching you. And they always say our children will do what we do times 10. So if we are always posting everything you eat online, your children are watching that. Versus, are you using it for good? Are you using it for impact? Are you learning online? When you're online, are you saying, come and see this course I signed up for? So I think really it's important that we model those things and we tell them what we're doing so that they know. So for example, my work is mostly online. So I've had to let my children know that my use of social media is largely because of my work. It's not because I want to show where I've gone, what I've eaten, the new hair I bought, or the new bag. All of those things are some of the things that our children are watching.
And the last question says, when can Miss Yetty have a session directly with the children, starting from our IB class?
That's up to you, Green Springs. We are ready to do it. Because really our goal with this particular phase of the training is to train, I think we're trying to train 1,000 to 1,500 children, parents, and educators. And Green Springs today is our first school that we're starting in this module for this year. So we're very happy to organize it and plan a session, because honestly, the more we talk about this, the more everybody is on the same page, the better effect for all of us long term, especially for those children getting older, because we're finding that if they don't use it intentionally, God forbid a situation where it's when they apply for visa or they want to get a job, because they are using social media to find out who you are and do due diligence. And then they go and see something you posted when you were feeling funny. They will say, no, sorry, this is not the kind of person we want in our school or in our company. And that is happening. It's not about abroad. Nigeria, it is happening. So yes, we must do it.
Thank you so much, Ms. Yetty. This has just been an enlightening session. We would love to have you back to talk to us more. And I know that for parents, we'll be sharing the link to the videos. So you'll be receiving it and you can listen to it again. And we'll be sharing some of Ms. Yetty's contacts as well. I know she promised us that she'll share some links that can help us with, the online safety that we can use at home as well. So I look forward to receiving that as well. If any questions, you can put up your virtual hand, and we can take 2 questions, please, so that we don't keep Miss Yetty. Okay, I think someone said, any questions? Okay, any virtual hand up? Okay, I think that is all for us. Thank you so much, Miss Yetty Williams. Any closing remarks?
No, thank you for having.
We have virtual hands.
Oh, okay.
Let's just take 2 virtual hands. Okay, so there's someone called Sheon. Sheon, I'll just ask you to unmute now, and you can quickly ask your questions before you wrap.
Thank you very much. Good evening, and thanks a lot. This was really, really very informative. The question that I have is, every time we talk about devices for kids, I know the context is always around, when do you give a child a phone? But when is it the right time to let them have maybe an iPad or a Galaxy Tab, especially when you need to do a lot of work in school using those devices, and those devices also have access to the internet, and they can be exposed there as well.
That's a very good point.
Because then it means, based on your last comment saying, the moment you give it to them, you need to start monitoring. That means we're already in the monitoring stage, because most of these kids are using some of these other devices earlier than 13. Absolutely,
spot on. Once a child has any device that is connected to the internet, it's the same thing. So yes, we talk phone, but it's the same thing. So whether it's the school that says, and I know a lot of schools now are trying to have tech-savvy children, so they all need to use laptops from as young as sometimes primary 3, primary. But once they have a internet-enabled device, they are exposed. So absolutely right. It's not just about phones that you delay. You have to put all of this in place once a child has any kind of device. And I think schools try in the school environment. Those devices there'll be firewall, things will be blocked and all of that. However, the exposure tends to happen when the children get home. So if there's no corresponding, framework at home to keep them safe online, then indeed the children are exposed. So yeah, as you said, the work has started from the minute when you give them any kind of internet-enabled device.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Ms. Yetty Williams, I know you posted a survey link. I will be sharing that as well with our parents as well. So
thank you very much. Yeah, that would be helpful.
For parents online. Yeah. And that is all from us at Green Springs School to our lovely community. And thank you so much for joining us. Bye for now.
Thank you for having me. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
Thank you.